Do you ever wonder what separates those who move through life with calm certainty from those who are endlessly pulled by chaos? Why do some rise each morning with a sense of quiet power, while others wake up already defeated by the noise of their own thoughts? The morning decides everything. Before the world begins to speak, before the messages, the deadlines, the demands, there is a moment of silence, fragile and short-lived. That moment is the doorway to the kind of life most people never touch. They believe that every day is a battle between what you can control and what you cannot, and that battle begins the instant your eyes open. Our story begins there, with a man who has forgotten what it means to begin. He wakes every morning with the same heaviness in his chest, scrolling through a glowing screen that feeds him 1,000 lives that aren't his own. He used to have clarity once, purpose once, but now he moves like a ghost through his own routines, lost in the fog of habit and distraction. Until one morning, something changes. A single unbearable question echoes in his mind. What if I lived this day differently? He sits up in bed. For the first time in years, he doesn't reach for his phone. The silence feels uncomfortable, like standing naked before his own mind. But in that discomfort there is something sacred, a stillness that had always been there, waiting for him to listen. He remembers a line he once read from Marcus Aurelius. From Marcus Aurelius. At dawn, when you wake unwillingly, let this thought be present. I am rising to the work of a human being. Those words strike him differently now. He realizes that his mornings had not belonged to him for a very long time. They belonged to noise, to distraction, to the endless chase for approval. And so he decides not to change everything, but to start with one simple act. To reclaim the first hour of his day, he opens the window. The air is cold and it bites at his skin, but beneath the chill there's life, a pulse that connects him to something ancient, something real. He takes a breath and feels the weight of the present moment pressing against his chest. It's not comfort he feels, but clarity. This is the first thing every Stoic morning demands: awareness. Before you move, before you speak, before you surrender to the machinery of routine, you must remember that you're alive. You must see your own existence not as a burden to escape, but as a responsibility to fulfill. He stands there in silence, the first rays of sunlight painting his room gold. For the first time in years, he's not thinking about what's missing. He's simply there, and in that stillness, something profound begins. The quiet rebirth of a man who decides that each morning will no longer be wasted. Because every day life gives us two choices, to wake up as we were or to wake up as who we could become. And that is where change begins. Have you ever wondered why comfort feels so good, and yet, over time, it quietly destroys your strength? It's strange, isn't it? We chase softness, warmth, ease. But every time we give in to comfort, we lose a small piece of ourselves. The Stoics knew this truth long before modern minds began talking about a mental toughness. They understood that a man who cannot face discomfort will never truly know freedom. Our story continues the next morning. The man wakes again, earlier this time. The alarm burns through the darkness, and for a moment he hesitates. His body begs for 5 more minutes, but something inside him whispers, "Arise. You owe this to yourself," and so he does. Not because he wants to, but because he promised himself he would. That's the difference between ordinary mornings and life-changing ones. Most people wake up waiting for motivation to appear. The Stoic wakes up and acts before motivation arrives. He knows that discipline is the only bridge between who he is and who he wants to be. As he moves through his small apartment, the air feels colder, the silence heavier, but there's pride in that resistance. He feels alive because he's not obeying comfort anymore. He makes his bed slowly, folds his blanket with precision, and whispers a quiet reminder. If you can command the small things, the big ones will follow. This is the second rule of a Stoic morning: do something difficult on purpose. It doesn't matter if it's waking up early, making your bed, or facing the cold shower that waits behind the curtain. What matters is that you win the first battle of the day, the one against your weaker self. And here's the reward for staying with this story till the end. By the time you finish this video, you'll know not just 10 morning habits, but 10 timeless Stoic disciplines that can rebuild the way you live, think, and feel. Each one has the power to realign your mind with something greater: peace, purpose, and control. Because here's the truth the modern world doesn't want you to hear: comfort doesn't love you. It only wants you still and small. But discipline will give you back your life. He finishes his morning routine with a sense of quiet pride. Not loud, not boastful, just the feeling that he's no longer drifting, he's steering. And in that small act of control, he discovers a truth the ancient philosophers lived by. He who conquers himself is greater than he who conquers the world. Do you ever stop to notice how loud the world has become? Not just the noise outside, the traffic, the voices, the constant notifications, but the noise inside. The endless thoughts, the racing worries, the comparisons that flood the mind before the sun has even climbed the sky. The Stoics believed that silence isn't the absence of sound, it's the presence of clarity. And that clarity can only be found when you stop running from yourself long enough to listen. On the third morning, our man wakes before the alarm. There's no rush today, no race to grab the phone, no sprint toward the next distraction. Instead, he sits quietly at the edge of his bed, watching the light seep into the room. He feels his thoughts arriving, like waves hitting the shore. Some are peaceful, others stormy. But this time, he doesn't drown in them. He observes. He lets them come and go. He pours a glass of water, sits by the window, and breathes. It's such a simple act, yet it feels like rebellion, because the world he lives in doesn't reward silence, it rewards noise. It rewards reaction, urgency, and fear, but not calm, not reflection. He remembers another line from Marcus Aurelius. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. And so he begins to write. Not much, just a few sentences in an old notebook. Thoughts about what he fears. Gratitude for what he still has. A promise to stay calm when life tests him. This is how the Stoics began their mornings. Not by chasing the day, but by grounding themselves in awareness before the world could pull them away. The silence, once uncomfortable, now feels sacred. It's in this quiet that he begins to notice things he never did before. The steady rhythm of his breathing, the distant hum of the city, the strange peace of being alone and alive. This is the third Stoic practice of the morning, reflection before reaction. Most people live in response, reacting to everything that happens to them. But the Stoic pauses. He thinks. He decides who he will be before the world decides it for him. In silence, the man realizes something powerful. His mornings aren't just routines anymore. They are conversations with his own soul. And in that dialogue, he begins to remember the person he was meant to be. Each breath becomes a choice, each thought a tool. And with every passing moment of quiet, he steps closer to control. Not over the world, but over himself. Because true strength doesn't come from noise, achievement, or attention. It comes from silence, from the calm within the storm. Have you ever noticed how easily we forget the things we once prayed for? How quickly comfort turns to expectation, and expectation turns to entitlement. We open our eyes each morning surrounded by miracles disguised as routine, and yet, most of us move through them blind. The Stoics had a simple truth. Gratitude is not about having everything, it's about seeing everything, and those who see clearly live differently. Our man wakes once again, now days into his new rhythm. The silence no longer feels strange. The early hours no longer fight him. But this morning, as he looks around his room, something strikes him. Everything he owns, the bed, the cup, the walls, once belonged to his dreams. Now they sit quietly in the background, taken for granted. He walks to the mirror, studies his reflection. Not with vanity, but with awareness. The face staring back carries the story of every hardship he survived. The pain he once cursed now appears as proof. He endured. He remembers a quote by Seneca. He is a wise man who does not grieve for the things which he has not, but rejoices for those which he has. And in that moment he feels something shift, a quiet warmth spreading through the cold edges of his morning. He begins to speak softly to himself, not in affirmation, but in recognition. He thanks the roof over his head, the body that still moves, the mind that still seeks. He even thanks his failures for teaching him more than success ever could. Gratitude, he realizes, isn't a feeling, it's a practice, a way of seeing the world that turns even ordinary moments into sacred ones. This is the fourth Stoic morning ritual. Practice gratitude even for what you wish were different. Because the world doesn't owe you comfort, luck, or ease, but it gives you today. And that's more than most ever receive. He steps outside for a moment, feeling the chill of dawn on his skin. The air smells different when you awake in the present. The world seems gentler, not because it changed, but because he did. He thinks of all the mornings he once wasted in complaint, scrolling through other people's lives, searching for something to fill the emptiness. Now he knows, it was never emptiness, it was blindness, the kind that comes when gratitude fades. And so each morning before the rush begins, he makes it a ritual to say thank you to the world that still allows him to rise. Because gratitude doesn't just make you happier, it makes you resilient. It reminds you that nothing is truly yours and everything can be taken. And that's what makes it all so precious. What if comfort is the very thing holding you back from becoming who you were meant to be? Think about it. Every moment of growth you've ever had came wrapped in pain. Every lesson, every breakthrough, every victory was born from something uncomfortable. And yet, we spend our lives running from the very thing that shapes us. The Stoics didn't avoid hardship, they invited it. Not because they were unfeeling, but because they knew the truth. The body grows strong when tested, and the mind is no different. On the fifth morning, the man wakes before dawn again. He can feel the warmth of his bed pulling him back, whispering the same tempting words, "Stay. You deserve it." But something in him has changed. He doesn't want easy anymore. He wants real. He throws off the blanket and steps into the cold. The air stings his skin. The floor is icy beneath his feet. But he doesn't flinch. Instead, he breathes deeper. Because that discomfort, that sharp, unwelcoming chill, is the first honest feeling of the day. It reminds him that he's alive, that his body still answers when called upon. He remembers a teaching from Epictetus. Difficulties show what men are, for the same reason that the storm shows the sailor and the battle shows the soldier. And he realizes as his breath fogs in the morning light that every challenge he avoids becomes a wall between who he is and who he could be. This is the fifth Stoic rule of the morning. Seek discomfort on purpose. Not because suffering is noble, but because avoiding it weakens the soul. The Stoic doesn't chase pain for pain's sake. He uses it as a forge, a place where weakness is burned away and discipline is born. He takes a cold shower that morning. The water crashes against him like ice, but he doesn't fight it. He lets it wash over him, steady and still, like a man learning to find peace in the storm. And in that moment, something shifts inside. The world hasn't gotten easier, he's simply grown harder. He steps out, heart pounding, skin alive, mind sharp, and for the first time he smiles. Not because it felt good, but because it didn't. Because he proved that comfort no longer rules him. And that's the secret most people never learn. When you control your reaction to discomfort, you gain power over everything that once controlled you. So each morning the man reminds himself, strength is a choice, courage is a choice, even peace is a choice. And every time he steps willingly into what others avoid, he earns a little more of all three. Have you ever noticed how much of your energy goes to things you can't control? Traffic, opinions, the past, the future. We spend so much of our lives wrestling storms that were never ours to calm. And yet the Stoics taught something so simple, so overlooked, that it could rewrite your entire sense of peace. Focus only on what you can control, and let the rest fall where it may. Our man wakes once again. The sky outside is grey, heavy with clouds. It's the kind of morning that makes you want to crawl back into comfort. But he doesn't. He's learned by now that every day begins with a test. As he stands by the window, he feels the pull of anxiety. The same thoughts that used to rule him, bills, deadlines, people, the fear of not being enough. But then he breathes, slow and deliberate. He separates what's his from what isn't. He cannot control the weather. He cannot control what others think. He cannot control how the world moves. But he can control his choices, his effort, his attitude, his attitude. That's the secret the Stoics lived by, and the reason they were unshakable in chaos. Because once you realize how small your circle of control really is, you stop wasting your soul on everything outside it. He pours his coffee and sits quietly. The world outside continues to rush, horns, phones, endless motion, but he stays still, calm, present. He whispers to himself a let it be. What's mine will come when I'm ready. This is the sixth Stoic morning discipline, master your response. You cannot control the wind, but you can adjust your sails. You cannot control the noise, but you can choose silence. You cannot control how the day unfolds, but you can decide how you'll face it. He opens his notebook and writes one question at the top of the page. Is this within my control? Every worry, Every goal, every emotion, he writes them down, one by one, and sorts them. Things he can control stay, things he can't he lets go, and with every word, he feels lighter. For the first time, his mind isn't fighting the world, it's flowing with it. That's what true Stoic peace feels like. Not detachment, not apathy, just clarity, the kind that comes when you stop trying to steer the storm and start mastering yourself. He finishes his coffee, closes the notebook, and smiles faintly. The world outside hasn't changed. The problems haven't disappeared. But inside, he's untouchable, because nothing has power over a man who no longer gives his peace away. Have you ever wondered how many mornings of your life you've already lost? Not to tragedy, but to hurry. We wake, we move, we rush. We check the time, the messages, the noise, and in that rush, life slips through our fingers like water we never even tried to hold. The Stoics believe that a man who lives without intention is already half dead, because motion without meaning is just another form of sleep. Our man knows this now. He spent so many mornings running, chasing a bus, a deadline, a version of himself that always seemed one step ahead. But now he moves differently, slowly, purposefully. Every motion is deliberate, almost sacred. He pours his water with care. He eats his breakfast without screens, without distraction. For the first time, he actually tastes his food, tastes his food. He feels the texture, the warmth, the small miracle of nourishment that he once ignored. The world outside hasn't slowed down, but he has. And in slowing down, he's discovered something the modern mind rarely touches. Intention is the heartbeat of peace. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "When you arise in the morning, think of what a precious privilege it is to be alive, to breathe, to think, to enjoy, to love." And that's exactly what this new version of him tries to remember. Each action, no matter how small, becomes a statement. I am here, I am aware, wow, I am not wasting this day. This is the 7th Stoic morning practice. Live with intention. It doesn't mean you need to move slowly or speak softly. It means you move consciously. You stop allowing the clock to own your soul. And you do what you do with focus, not frenzy. He notices how peace follows presence like a shadow. When he eats with attention, gratitude appears. When he walks without distraction, the air feels different. Even the sunlight seems to move with rhythm instead of rush. It's strange how simple it is. This power of living deliberately. You don't need to escape the world, you just need to arrive in it fully. He takes one last sip of his tea, sets the cup down carefully, and lets the moment linger. For once, he isn't thinking about what's next, he's thinking about now. Because every morning the choice is the same. Rush through life and miss it, or slow down and truly live it. And that, perhaps, is the quietest revolution of all. Do you ever wake up wishing the day will finally go perfectly? That nothing will go wrong, no one will test your patience, no problem will interrupt your peace. And yet, every time life fails to match that hope, you fall into frustration, disappointment, even anger. The Stoics believe that this is where most suffering begins, in the false belief that life should be easy. But they taught something far wiser. Do not hope for an easy day. Prepare for a hard one. On this morning, a man sits in silence before the day begins. He closes his eyes and thinks of what might happen, not as a pessimist, but as a strategist. Someone might insult him. The work may not go his way. The plans he made could crumble without warning. He lets each image appear, and instead of resisting it, he breathes through it. He imagines himself calm in the face of chaos, steady in the storm, unmoved by the noise. When he finally opens his eyes, nothing has changed outside, but everything has changed within. This is what the Stoics called premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. It is not negativity, it is strength. It's how they train their minds to stay prepared to meet adversity with grace instead of shock. The man remembers a quote from Seneca. He robs present ills of their power who has perceived their coming beforehand. Those words feel truer than ever. He realizes that peace is not built by avoiding hardship, it's built by expecting it. This becomes the 8th Stoic morning habit. Prepare for adversity, not by fearing it, but by understanding that life will always test you. And every test is an invitation to prove your principles. He finishes his reflection feeling stronger than he did the day before. There's a quiet confidence in knowing that no matter what happens, he's ready. He doesn't need the world to be gentle anymore, because he's learned how to be unshaken. And that's the beauty of Stoicism. It doesn't promise a calm world, It teaches you how to be calm in the world. He stands, breathes deeply, and smiles faintly to himself. The day ahead is uncertain, but then again, so is every day. And now he's finally learned how to meet uncertainty not with fear, but with readiness. Because the Stoic doesn't wait for perfect days. He builds the strength to face imperfect ones. Have you ever felt like the world moves too fast? Faster than your heart, faster than your thoughts, faster than your spirit can keep up? We spend our lives surrounded by noise, glass, and screens, but deep down, something ancient in us still longs for the quiet rhythm of nature. The sun, the wind, the stillness that reminds us what we really are. The Stoics believed that to live in harmony with nature was to live in harmony with yourself. Because everything in nature moves with purpose. The tree doesn't rush to grow. The river doesn't fight its current. The dawn never forces the sun. It simply rises. On this morning, our man steps outside earlier than usual. The air greets him with a crisp chill, and the sky glows faintly with the colours of awakening. He walks slowly, barefoot on the cold ground, feeling the earth beneath him, raw, real, alive. It's strange, he thinks, how something so simple can feel so sacred. He listens to the world, not the world of machines and messages, but the one that existed long before either. The one that moves without effort, teaches without words. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "I constantly regard the universe as one living being, having one substance and one soul, and standing there, he finally understands." The calm he has been chasing was never hidden in the silence of his room. It was waiting in the pulse of the world itself. This is the 9th Stoic morning habit. Align yourself with nature. Strip away the excess. Simplify. Connect. Remember that you are not separate from the world, you are made of it. The same air that fills your lungs has circled mountains, oceans, and stars before finding you. He watches the sunlight break over the horizon. The light doesn't ask for permission, it simply appears. It doesn't shout or demand attention, it just is. And that, he realizes, is how he wants to live. Quietly, steadily, purposefully. The man feels his worries dissolve into something greater. For the first time, he isn't just existing in the world, he feels part of it. The boundary between him and everything else fades, and what remains is a feeling the Stoics called ataraxia, the stillness of the soul. And in that stillness, he understands what it means to be alive, to live simply, to live truthfully, to live in rhythm with what is natural and eternal. Because life isn't meant to be conquered, it's meant to be understood. Have you ever wondered why we act as if we have forever? We plan endlessly, we postpone joy. We promise ourselves that someday will begin, someday when we have time, money, peace, the perfect moment. But the Stoics whispered a truth that cuts through all illusion. Memento mori, remember, you will die. At first those words sound dark, but they aren't about fear, they're about fear. They're about clarity. Because when you remember how fragile your life is, how easily it can vanish, every morning becomes sacred, every breath a gift. Our man wakes before the sun. He no longer fights the day, he welcomes it. His mornings are quiet now, simple, deliberate, honest. But today, as he looks out over the soft glow of dawn, he feels something deeper than peace. He feels urgency, not the restless kind that rushes, the sacred kind that awakens. He sits down, takes his pen, and writes just one sentence in his journal. If this were my last day alive, how would I live it? He lets the question sit in his chest. It stings, but in that sting there's truth. He realizes how many days he's wasted waiting to begin, waiting for the world to make sense, waiting for permission to feel alive. He remembers a passage from Seneca. Let us prepare our minds as if we'd come to the very end of life. Let us postpone nothing. Let us balance life's books each day. And in that moment, everything becomes clear. He understands now why the Stoics rose early, faced discomfort, practiced gratitude, embraced silence, and disciplined their minds. Because they knew time was the only thing truly theirs, and every moment spent unconsciously was a piece of eternity lost. This is the 10th and final Stoic morning principle. Remember, you will die, so that you may truly live. When you hold mortality close, life expands. Every sunrise becomes extraordinary. Every breath feels holy. Every small act, a conversation, a meal, a walk, carries the weight of something infinite. He steps outside one last time. The world is quiet. The wind brushes his skin. He watches the light climb across the rooftops, slow and golden, and realizes this moment will never happen again. And that is what makes it perfect. He smiles, not with sadness but with peace, because now he knows he doesn't need forever. He just needs today. And that is the heart of Stoicism. To wake each morning not in fear of death, but in gratitude for life. To live every day as if it matters, because it does. So when you rise tomorrow, don't scroll, don't rush, don't forget. Just breathe, be still, and remember, this morning will never return. Make it worthy of your last.